Jake Morrison walked through the massive doors of the Grand Council chamber for the first time. His heart beat fast as he looked around the huge room. The ceiling went up so high he could barely see the top. Strange lights floated in the air without any wires or supports. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to move and change colors. But what caught his attention most was not the amazing room. It was the other people in it. Every single alien representative carried a weapon. Big weapons. Scary weapons. The tall blue aliens called Korthani had long glowing swords at their sides. The bird-like Zephyrians held staff weapons that crackled with electricity. The bug creatures called Vrex carried spears that seemed to be alive and moving. Jake looked down at his own empty hands. No weapon, no sword, no gun, nothing. He was the only person in the entire chamber who came in without any way to fight. Other aliens stared at him as he walked to his seat. Some looked confused. Others looked worried. A few seemed almost scared. Jake tried to ignore their stares and focus on finding his place. His seat had a small sign that read, Earth Federation. Human representative. The chair was too big for him, clearly made for larger beings. He sat down and felt very small in the huge room full of armed aliens. Council Speaker Threnox called the meeting to order. Threnox was 12 feet tall and looked like he was made of living crystal. His voice boomed through the chamber without any speakers or microphones. Welcome all representatives to today's session, Threnox announced. We have much to discuss regarding the trade routes through the Outer Rim territories. Jake pulled out his tablet and began taking notes. This was important for Earth. The trade. Routes would determine how much it would cost to ship goods between human colonies and the rest of the galaxy. As the meeting went on, Jake noticed how the other aliens acted. When they wanted to make a point, they would stand up and put their hand on their weapon. When they disagreed with someone, they would make their weapons glow or hum. It was like a constant reminder that they could fight if they needed to. Korthani representative, a scarred warrior named General Vex, spoke about military escorts for trade ships. He pulled his glowing sword halfway out of its holder while he talked. Any ship that cannot defend itself has no business in space, he declared. Several other aliens nodded and touched their own weapons. Jake just sat quietly and continued taking notes. During the first break, many aliens stood in small groups talking. Jake got up to stretch his legs and get some water from the fountain near his seat. The water tasted strange, but not bad. A female alien with purple skin and scales approached him. She was about his height, which was unusual. Most aliens in the chamber were much bigger than humans. Human Morrison, she said in accented but clear English. I am Ambassador Kelthera of the Drakmari Collective. Nice to meet you, Jake replied. With a smile. Please, just call me Jake. Kelthera looked around to make sure no one else was listening. Then she moved closer to Jake. I must ask you something. I have read your species admission papers many times. Why are you the only race that does not carry weapons in the chamber? Jake had expected this question. We're not allowed to carry weapons here. Kelthera's eyes went wide. Not allowed? But that makes no sense. Every civilized species bears arms as a symbol of their power. How can you show that your people are strong without a weapon? Maybe that's exactly why we don't need one, Jake said calmly. I do not understand, Kelthera said, looking even more confused. Jake took a sip of his strange-tasting water. Kelthera, can I ask you something? How long has your species been part of the Federation? 47 years, she answered quickly. And in all that time, how many fights have broken out in this chamber? Kelthera thought for a moment. Perhaps 15 or 20. Sometimes disagreements cannot be solved with words alone. And how many people died in those fights? Maybe 50 or 60 total. But that is normal. When honor is at stake, blood must sometimes be spilled. Jake nodded slowly. And how many fights have happened in this chamber since humans joined the Federation 5 years ago? Kelthera paused. She counted on her fingers, then looked confused. None, but surely that is just luck, is it? Jake asked before Kelthera could answer. The break ended, and everyone returned to their seats. But Jake could see her thinking about his words. The rest of the meeting was mostly boring trade talk. Different species argued about shipping costs and fuel prices. The Vrex wanted to charge extra fees for protection. The Zephyrians complained about pirates attacking their ships. Jake listened carefully and took notes. He noticed patterns in how the aliens negotiated. They used their weapons like tools of persuasion. The bigger the weapon, the more seriously others took their demands. Near the end of the session, a small crisis happened. The representatives from 2 different species started arguing about mining rights on a distant planet. Their voices got louder and angrier. The Hectarian delegate, a creature that looked like a walking tree, stood up and drew a weapon that looked like a living branch with thorns. The Hectarian Union has claimed that system for 60 years. He shouted. The mollusk representative, whose name Jake couldn't pronounce, pulled out what looked like a glowing shell. Your claims mean nothing. We were there first. Other aliens began choosing sides. Weapons started coming out all around the chamber. The air filled with the sound of charging energy weapons and scraping metal. Jake stayed seated. He kept his hands on his tablet and watched everything with calm eyes. Council. Speaker Thrinox raised his crystal arms. Order. We will have order in this chamber. But the aliens kept arguing and waving their weapons. The situation was getting dangerous. Jake quietly stood up. He didn't touch any weapon because he didn't have one. He just stood there with his empty hands visible. Excuse me, he said in a normal voice. The strange thing was, everyone heard him. Even though he wasn't shouting and didn't have any microphone, his voice somehow reached every corner of the chamber. The arguing stopped. Weapons lowered. All eyes turned to look at the small human with no weapon. The mining dispute can be solved easily, Jake said. According to Federation Law 47B, any system with existing settlements has shared mining rights. Both species can mine there if they follow the environmental protection rules. He sat back down. The chamber was quiet for a moment. Then Council. Speaker Thrinox checked his legal database. The human is correct. Law 47B does indeed cover this situation. The 2 arguing species put their weapons away and sat down. The crisis was over. As the meeting ended and delegates began to leave, Jake packed up his tablet. He noticed that many aliens were looking at him differently now. Not with confusion or worry, but with something that might have been respect. Ambassador. Kelthera approached him again as he headed for the exit. That was well done, she said. Thank you, Jake replied. But I still do not understand. How did you know that law? And why did everyone listen to you when you have no weapon to back up your words? Jake paused at the chamber doors. He looked back at the massive room where dozens of armed aliens had just spent hours arguing and threatening each other. Maybe, he said quietly, the most powerful weapon isn't something you carry in your hand. He walked out, leaving Kelthera standing there trying to figure out what he meant. Outside the chamber, Jake took a deep breath. His first day as Earth's representative to the Galactic Federation was over. It had gone better than he expected, but he knew this was just the beginning. Soon, the other species would start to understand why humans were the only ones not allowed to carry weapons in the council chamber. And when they did, everything would change. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison first walked into the Grand Council chamber. He was getting used to the routine now. Every week, the same aliens gathered in the same huge room to argue about the same problems. Trade routes, mining rights, territorial disputes. Most of it was boring paperwork disguised as important politics, but today felt different. Jake could sense tension in the air as soon as he entered the chamber. The other aliens were talking in hushed voices. Their weapons seemed to glow brighter than usual. Even Council Speaker Threnox looked worried, his crystal body flickering with nervous energy. Jake took his seat and pulled out his tablet. He nodded politely to Ambassador Kelthra, who had become something like a friend over the past few months. She still asked him questions about human culture and politics, trying to understand why his species was so different. The chamber feels strange today, Kelthra whispered as Jake sat down. What's happening? Jake asked quietly. The Korthani have called for a special session. They want to discuss territorial expansion. Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Territorial expansion was just a nice way of saying invasion. The Korthani were the most warlike species in the Federation. They had a huge military and weren't afraid to use it. Council Speaker Threnox called the session to order. Today we address the proposal from the Korthani Empire regarding the Zerion system. General Vex stood up. He was even more intimidating than usual today. His battle scars seemed darker, and his plasma sword glowed bright red at his side. The Zerion system contains valuable minerals that the galaxy needs. The current inhabitants are not using these resources properly. A small, gentle voice spoke from the back of the chamber. But the Zerion system is our home. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was Quilm, the representative of the Mallory people. The Mallory were amphibian creatures who looked like walking frogs. They were peaceful farmers and artists who had never hurt anyone. Quilm was shaking as he stood up. His large eyes were filled with fear. The Mallory have lived on Zerion 3 for thousands of years. We grow food there. We make art there. It is our world. General Vex laughed. It was not a nice sound. The Mallory have no military, no weapons, no way to defend their claims. They are wasting valuable resources on farming and painting when those minerals could power entire star systems. But where will we go? Quilm asked, his voice cracking. Zerion 3 is the only world we know. Our eggs can only hatch in our native soil. If we leave, our species will die. That is not the Korthani Empire's problem, General Vex said coldly. The weak have no right to hold back the strong. The Mallory will be relocated to another world. If they refuse to leave peacefully, they will be removed by force. The chamber fell silent. This was exactly what everyone had feared. The Korthani were talking about genocide, and they were doing it openly in the council chamber. Jake looked around the room. Most of the other aliens were staring at their desks or looking away. Nobody wanted to challenge the Korthani. They were too powerful, too dangerous. Quilm sat down heavily in his chair. Tears ran down his amphibian face. Please, he whispered. We have done nothing wrong. We just want to live in peace. Jake felt anger building in his chest. This was wrong. The Federation was supposed to protect small, peaceful species like the Mallory. But everyone was too scared to stand up to the Korthani bullies. Slowly, Jake stood up. The movement caught everyone's attention. All eyes turned to look at the human representative. General Vex stopped talking and stared at Jake with surprise. The Earth Federation objects to this proposal, Jake said clearly. His voice carried across the entire chamber. Even though he wasn't shouting, everyone could hear him perfectly. General Vex's surprise quickly turned to amusement. He started laughing again, louder this time. And what exactly will the weaponless humans do to stop us? Write us a strongly worded letter? Other Korthani in the chamber joined in the laughter. They thought it was hilarious that a human would dare to challenge them. Will you send us your poets and artists? General Vex mocked. Perhaps your farmers can defeat our battle fleet with vegetables? The laughter got louder, Even some aliens from other species started chuckling. The idea of peaceful humans standing up to the mighty Korthony Empire seemed ridiculous, but Jake didn't look embarrassed or angry. He just stood there calmly, waiting for the laughter to die down. "If necessary," he said simply. Something in his tone made the laughter stop immediately. It wasn't threatening or loud, but there was something underneath his calm words that made everyone feel uncomfortable. Ambassador Kelthra noticed that General Vex had stopped laughing. In fact, he looked like he wanted to leave the chamber as quickly as possible. Council Speaker Threnox sensed the tension and quickly intervened. "The Korthony proposal will be tabled for further review. This session is now adjourned." Aliens began filing out of the chamber quickly. Everyone seemed eager to get away from the strange atmosphere that had settled over the room. General Vex was one of the first to leave. Despite all his earlier boasting, he avoided looking at Jake as he walked past. Quilm approached Jake as the chamber emptied. "Thank you," the little amphibian said quietly. "I know you cannot really stop them, but thank you for speaking up. Don't give up hope yet," Jake told him gently. "Sometimes things work out better than you expect." After Quilm left, only Jake and Kelthra remained in the chamber. "That was either very brave or very stupid," Kelthra said. "Maybe both," Jake admitted. "The Korthony have the largest military in the Federation. They have conquered dozens of worlds. What can Earth possibly do against them?" Jake packed up his tablet. "Kelthra, can I ask you something? How many wars has your species fought?" "The Drakmari have fought 12 major wars in our history," she answered proudly. "We have won 9 of them. How many wars have humans fought?" Kelthra thought about this. "I do not know. Your history files are classified, but surely not many. You seem too peaceful for warfare." Jake smiled sadly. "We've fought thousands of wars, maybe tens of thousands. We've been killing each other for most of our history. But you have no weapons here. Your military is small compared to other species. Our military is exactly as large. As it needs to be," Jake said mysteriously. As they walked toward the exit, Kelthra kept asking questions. "If humans are so warlike, why does everyone think you are peaceful? Why are you forbidden to carry weapons in the chamber?" "Those are good questions," Jake said. "Maybe someday you'll understand the answers." That night, Jake sent a long encrypted message to Earth. He used words and codes that would mean nothing to anyone listening in. But back on Earth, people in important offices would understand exactly what he was saying. The message was simple. The Korthony were planning to commit genocide. The Federation was too scared to stop them. It was time for humans to remind the galaxy why they were special. Over the next few days, strange things started happening around the galaxy. Korthony military communications began experiencing mysterious failures. Their supply ships started having navigation problems. Some of their war factories shut down due to unexplained computer errors. The Korthony blamed it on random technical failures. After all, who could possibly be sabotaging their systems? The only species with advanced enough technology to do such. Things were their allies. General Vex called for an emergency military council. But when he tried to contact his commanders, half of them couldn't be reached. Their communication systems were down. "This is impossible," he growled to his aide. "Our technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. These failures cannot be random. Perhaps we should reconsider this Arion operation," his aide suggested nervously. "Wait until our systems are fully operational again." "Never," General Vex shouted. "The Korthony Empire does not back down from weaklings." But privately, he was starting to worry. These weren't normal technical problems. Someone was targeting Korthony systems specifically. But who? And how? Back on Earth, in a room that didn't officially exist, people in plain clothes worked at computers that weren't supposed to be there. They were doing things that they would never admit to doing. One of them, a quiet woman named Lisa, looked up. From her screen, the Corthany military network is completely compromised. We have access to everything. Her supervisor, a tired-looking man named Bob, nodded. Good. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Let's show them what happens when you threaten our friends. In the council chamber, Ambassador Kelthera couldn't stop thinking about Jake's strange behavior. She had seen fear in General Vex's eyes when the human spoke up. That shouldn't have been possible. The Corthany weren't afraid of anything, but they seemed to be afraid of weaponless humans. She decided she needed to understand why. The next morning brought news that shocked the entire galaxy. 3 Corthany battle fleets had mysteriously lost all power while patrolling near the Zarian system. They were floating dead in space, completely helpless. Rescue ships were on their way, but it would take days to reach them. And somehow, all their emergency communication systems had failed at the same time that it was impossible. It was also terrifying. General Vex stood in his private office, staring out at the stars. For the first time in his military career, he felt something he had never felt before. He felt afraid, and he was starting to understand that maybe humans weren't as harmless as they appeared. Ambassador Kelthera couldn't sleep. For 3 nights, she had been thinking about the strange events in the council chamber. The Corthany military was still stranded in space. Their rescue missions kept failing due to more mysterious technical problems. And somehow, she knew it was all connected to the quiet human who sat weaponless in the chamber. She had to find answers. The next morning, Kelthera made her way to the diplomatic compound where all the alien representatives lived during council sessions. The human quarters were in the smallest section, which made sense since Earth only had 1 representative. She found Jake Morrison in a small garden behind his building. He was kneeling next to some plants, watering them with a simple metal can. The plants looked strange and colorful, nothing like the gray vegetation on her home world. "Those are beautiful," Kelthera said as she approached. Jake looked up and smiled. "Thank you. They're from Earth. Tomatoes, peppers, and some flowers my daughter picked out." "You have a daughter?" "2 daughters and a son," Jake said, standing up and brushing dirt off his hands. "They're back on Earth with my wife. I miss them." Kelthera felt a strange emotion. She had never thought of the human as having a family. He always seemed so calm and professional in the council chamber. But now she could see the sadness in his eyes when he talked about his children. "Jake, I need to ask you something important." "I figured you might," he said. "Would you like some tea?" "It's another Earth tradition." They sat at a small table in the garden. Jake made tea in a simple clay pot. The smell was pleasant and calming. Kelthera had never tasted anything like it. "This is good," she said after taking a sip. "My grandmother's recipe," Jake said. "She taught me that the best conversations happen over tea." Kelthera set down her cup and looked directly at Jake. "I must know the truth. Why are humans forbidden to carry weapons in the council chamber? Your species clearly has advanced technology. We all know you have military forces. Yet you're the only ones denied the right to bear arms in our most sacred space." Jake was quiet for a moment. He picked up a small flower that had fallen from one of his plants. "Kelthera, how long have your people been part of the Federation?" 47 years, she answered, the same response she had given months ago. "And before humans joined, how often did council sessions end in violence?" Kelthera thought carefully. "Perhaps twice per year. Sometimes disputes could not be resolved with words. Blood had to be spilled to settle matters of honor." "And how many people died in those fights? Over the years?" "Maybe 200 or 300 total, but that was normal. Every species understands that sometimes violence is necessary." Jake nodded. Slowly, And since humans joined the Federation 5 years ago, how many council sessions have ended in bloodshed? None, Calthera admitted. Then she paused, really thinking about it for the first time. But that must be coincidence. Is it? Jake asked softly. He stood up and walked to a device on his table. It looked like a simple tablet, but when he touched it, a large holographic display appeared in the air above them. Let me show you something. Jake said, "This is the history of my species." The hologram showed images that made Calthera gasp. Humans fighting with primitive weapons. Armies of thousands clashing on battlefields. Cities burning. Ships firing weapons at each other across vast oceans. We've been fighting wars for our entire recorded history, Jake explained as the images changed. We invented new ways to kill each other every few generations. We created weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. The hologram showed massive explosions, mushroom clouds rising into the sky. Calthera had never seen anything so terrifying. We fought wars that consumed entire continents, Jake continued. We poisoned our own air and water with the tools of war. We nearly destroyed our entire planet multiple times. But your people seem so peaceful now, Calthera whispered. We learned, Jake said simply. We had to learn, or we would have killed ourselves completely. The hologram changed to show more recent images. Humans working together to rebuild cities. Scientists sharing knowledge. Children from different countries playing together. We discovered something that no other species in the Federation seems to understand, Jake said. We learned that the most dangerous weapon isn't something you hold in your hand. Then what is it? Jake touched his temple. It's something you carry in your mind. Calthera stared at the hologram, trying to understand. I don't follow. Jake waved his hand, and the hologram changed again. Now it showed star charts, shipping routes, communication networks. Every species in the Federation thinks power comes from bigger guns, stronger shields, faster ships. But humans learn something different. He pointed to the display. Real power comes from understanding systems, political systems, economic systems, social systems. When you understand how these systems work, you know exactly where to apply pressure to get what you want. Pressure? Information is pressure, Jake explained. Economic influence is pressure. Social connections are pressure. When you combine all these types of pressure correctly, you can achieve anything you want without firing a single shot. Calthera looked at the current news feeds floating in the hologram. Corthany ships still stranded, rescue missions failing, supply lines disrupted. The Corthany military problems, she said slowly. That's not coincidence. Jake didn't answer directly. Instead, he showed her more information. The Corthany Empire depends on 17 different supply companies to keep their military running. 12 of those companies have had computer problems. This week, 5 of them discovered accounting errors that froze their payments. Computer problems that humans could cause? Hypothetically, Jake said carefully, if someone wanted to cause those problems. And the accounting errors? It's amazing how often large companies make mathematical mistakes when their computer systems aren't working properly. Calthera felt a chill run down her spine. You're saying humans can shut down entire military fleets without firing a weapon? I'm saying that when you understand how things really work, you realize that everything is connected. Supply chains, communication networks, financial systems. Touch the right points in the right way, and you can make almost anything happen. Jake sat back down and refilled their teacups. The Corthany think power comes from having the biggest guns, but their guns are useless if they have no fuel. Their fuel is useless if they can't pay for it. They can't pay for it if their banks have computer problems. And humans control the computers? Humans understand computers, Jake corrected. We built them. We designed most of the networks that connect the galaxy. When you create something, you always leave yourself ways to fix it if it breaks. Kelthar was beginning to understand, and it frightened her. So you could do this to any species? We could do this to every species at the same time, Jake said quietly. But we choose not to. Why? Jake picked up the fallen flower again and twirled it between his fingers. Because we learned that destroying your enemies doesn't solve problems. It just creates new enemies. It's much better to help people get what they want in ways that also give you what you want. But the Corphini want to destroy the Mullery. The Corphini want the minerals in the Zarian system, Jake corrected. They don't actually care about hurting the Mullery. They just think that's the easiest way to get what they want. And you're showing them it's not the easiest way? We're showing them that it's the most expensive way, Jake said. Every day. Their fleets sit powerless in space, cost them millions of credits. Every supply ship that gets lost costs them more. Every computer system that needs repair costs them more. Jake leaned forward. Soon, General Vex will realize that conquering Zarian 3 will cost more than buying the minerals from the Mullery through normal trade agreements. And if he doesn't realize that, Jake's expression became serious. Then the computer problems will get worse. The supply issues will spread. Other Corphini systems will start having difficulties. Their economy will slow down. Their people will start asking questions about why their government can't keep the lights on. Kelthar understood now. You would destroy their entire civilization. We would let them destroy themselves, Jake said. All we would do is remove their ability to hurt others while they make their decision. They sat in silence for several minutes. Kelthar sipped her tea and tried to process everything she had learned. This is why you're Forbidden's weapons in the council chamber, she finally said. We're not Forbidden's weapons because we're dangerous. Jake explained. We're Forbidden's weapons because we don't need them. Every other species carries weapons to show their power. We show our power by not needing weapons. The empty hands are more frightening than any sword. Exactly, Jake said. When someone carries a weapon, you know what they're capable of. When someone doesn't need a weapon, you have no idea what they might do. Kelthar finished her tea and stood up to leave. Her mind was spinning with new understanding. Jake, one more question. If humans are so powerful, why do you let other species think you're weak? Jake smiled and returned to watering his plants. Because scared people make bad decisions. But people who respect you will listen to reason. And you want them to listen? We want them to choose cooperation over conflict, Jake said. It's better for everyone, including us. The next council session started like any other. Aliens filed into the massive chamber, their weapons gleaming at their sides. Jake Morrison took his usual seat, empty-handed as always. But something felt different in the air. There was more tension than usual. The Corphini military was still stranded in space. General Vex looked tired and angry. His usual confident swagger was gone. Dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't been sleeping well. Council. Speaker Threnox called the session to order. Today we will address trade disputes between the Zephyrian Trade Syndicate and the Vrex Hive. Jake pulled out his tablet, expecting another boring discussion about shipping costs. But as soon as the Zephyrian representative stood up, he knew. This would be different. Captain Theriel was a tall bird-like alien with bright blue feathers. She held her energy staff with both hands, and it was glowing brighter than Jake had ever seen before. The Vrex Hive has committed acts of piracy against our trade ships, she screeched. They have stolen our cargo and murdered our crews. The Vrex representative, Ambassador Zach, jumped to his feet. His bioelectric spear crackled with angry energy. The insect-like alien's multiple eyes all focused on Captain Thyrol. Lies. Zach hissed through his mandibles. The Zephyrians accuse us of theft when their own ships carry stolen Rex biotechnology. We bought that technology legally through proper trade agreements. Theriel shot back. More lies. The biosignatures prove the technology was taken from destroyed Rex ships. Other aliens in the chamber began choosing sides. The Hectarians supported the Zephyrians. The Mollusk Federation backed the Vrex. Ancient grudges and old alliances came to the surface. Jake watched as weapons began emerging all around the chamber. Energy staffs hummed to life. Plasma swords glowed with deadly heat. Bioelectric spears sparked with dangerous energy. You parasites contribute nothing to galactic trade. Thyril screamed, raising her staff higher. And you thieves steal everything you touch. Zack replied, pointing his spear at her. The argument was getting louder and more dangerous by the second. Other species were standing up and drawing their weapons. The Drakmari pulled out their crystal blades. The Korthani reached for their plasma swords. Even the peaceful Mollusk Federation had some kind of defensive shields ready. Council. Speaker Threnox tried to restore order. Please, return to your seats. We can resolve this through proper discussion. But nobody was listening. Centuries of mistrust and competition were boiling over. The chamber filled with the sound of charging weapons and angry voices in a dozen different languages. Jake could see this was about to become exactly the kind of bloodbath that used to happen in council. Sessions before humans joined the Federation. Someone was going to get hurt, maybe killed in the middle of all the chaos. Jake Morrison stood up. He didn't draw a weapon because he didn't have one. He didn't shout or make any threatening gestures. He just stood there in the center of the storm with his hands clearly visible and empty. Sit down. His voice wasn't loud. He didn't use any amplification or special technology. But somehow, every single alien in the chamber heard him clearly. The effect was immediate and startling. Energy weapons powered down. Plasma swords dimmed. Bioelectric spears stopped crackling. Every single delegate returned to their seat without question. The silence that followed was complete and absolute. Council Speaker Threnox stared in amazement. His crystal body flickered with confusion. How did you ... Jake ignored the question and looked directly at Captain Thyril and Ambassador Zack. Both of them were now sitting quietly, their weapons put away. The Zephyrian ships were attacked in Grid Sector 7, Jake said in the same calm voice. The biotechnology signatures do match Vrex patterns, but the attack vectors are wrong. He touched his tablet, and a holographic star chart appeared above the chamber. Red dots showed the locations of the attacks. Vrex ships don't attack from solar north, Jake continued. Their compound eyes make that approach tactically inferior. They would have come from solar east, where the light patterns work better for their vision. Ambassador Zack nodded slowly. That is correct. We would never attack from that angle. However, Jake continued, there is one species in the Federation that has been developing biomimicry technology for the past 3 years. The star chart changed to show shipping routes and research facilities. The Drakmari have been working on copying other species' biological advantages. They've also been pressuring both the Zephyrians and Vrex to lower their trade tariffs. All eyes turned to Ambassador Kelthera. Her purple face had gone pale. She looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. A false flag operation would give the Drakmari leverage over both species, Jake explained. Make them fight each other while positioning themselves as mediators. You have no proof of this, Kelthera said, but her voice was shaky. Jake's tablet displayed new information. I have shipping manifests from Drakmari colonies showing massive increases in biotech imports over the past 6 months. I have communication intercepts showing Drakmari military exercises in Grid Sector 7 during the same time period as the attacks. The holographic display showed detailed records, shipping logs, and communication transcripts. The evidence was overwhelming. I also have tactical analysis showing that the Drakmari are the only species in the Federation capable of executing this type of deception operation. Captain Thyrell and Ambassador Zack looked at each other, then at Kelthera. The anger between them was gone, replaced by understanding. The Drakmari played us against each other, Thyrell said quietly. They wanted us to destroy each other's trade. Capabilities, Zack agreed. Kelt Hera tried to stand up, but Jake's next words stopped her. The question is, Jake said, his tone still conversational and almost friendly, do we resolve this diplomatically, or do I continue sharing what human intelligence services have discovered about everyone in this room? The chamber became even quieter, if that was possible. Every alien representative seemed to shrink in their seat. The implication was clear. Humans knew everyone's secrets. General Vex, who had been unusually quiet during the entire incident, spoke up. What exactly do you know? Jake looked at him directly. Do you really want me to answer that question in front of everyone, General? Vex's face went gray. He quickly shook his head. I thought not, Jake said calmly. Council Speaker Thrennox found his voice. Human Morrison, how did you acquire all this information? We asked for it, Jake said simply. Most of it is publicly available if you know where to look and how to analyze it. The rest came from normal diplomatic intelligence gathering. But the level of detail, the coordination required ... Humans are very good at organizing information, Jake said. We've had a lot of practice. Ambassador Kelthera finally found the courage to speak. What happens now? Jake looked around the chamber at all the worried faces. Now you all remember why humans are in the Federation. We're not here to conquer anyone or steal anyone's territory. We're here to prevent exactly this kind of problem. He gestured too, the star chart still floating above them. The Drakmari will return the stolen biotechnology to the Vrex. They will pay compensation to the Zephyrians for the destroyed ships. And they will stop trying to manipulate other species into fighting each other. And if we refuse? Kelthera asked. Then everyone else will learn about your biomimicry program, your false flag operations, and your plans to corner the galactic biotech market. I suspect that would make trade negotiations much more difficult for your people. Kelthera nodded. Slowly, she understood the choice she was being given. The Zephyrians and Vrex will work together to improve security in Grid Sector 7, Jake continued. This will prevent future incidents and benefit both species. He looked at General Vex. And the Korthini will find that their technical difficulties clear up very quickly once they abandon their plans for the Zarian system. Vex's eyes widened. He finally understood what had been happening to his military. The Malari are peaceful. Farmers who just want to live in their homes, Jake said. There's no reason to disturb them when there are plenty of uninhabited mineral-rich worlds available for mining. Jake sat back down and put away his tablet. Does anyone have any questions about this arrangement? The chamber remained silent. Every alien representative was thinking about what the human had just demonstrated. Without drawing a weapon or raising his voice, he had solved multiple crises and prevented a war. More importantly, he had shown them all that humans knew far. More about galactic politics than anyone had suspected. Council Speaker Thrennox cleared his throat. I believe we can consider these matters resolved. This session is adjourned. As aliens filed out of the chamber, many of them looked at Jake Morrison with new eyes. The weaponless human wasn't harmless at all. He was the most dangerous person in the room, and he had chosen to use that danger to protect the weak instead of conquering the strong. That choice, more than any weapon, was what made humans truly terrifying. 3 days after the dramatic council session, Ambassador Kelthera walked slowly through the diplomatic gardens. Her mind was still spinning from everything that had happened. The way Jake Morrison had stopped a war with just words. The way he had known secrets about every species in the Federation. The way everyone had obeyed him without question. She found Jake in his usual spot, tending to his earth plants. He was humming a quiet song while watering his tomatoes. He looked so peaceful and normal that it was hard to believe he was the same person who had commanded an entire chamber full of armed aliens. "Hello, Kelthera," Jake said without looking up. "I was wondering when you would come to see me." "You knew I would come? You have questions." "You always have questions." Jake smiled and gestured to the small table where they had shared tea before. "Would you like to sit?" Kelthera sat down, but she couldn't relax. "Jake, I need to understand. What happened in that chamber? How did you know all those things about my people? About everyone's people?" Jake finished watering his plants and joined her at the table. "Humans have been watching all of you since before we joined the Federation. We know about the Corthany's secret weapon developments. We know about the Zephyrian black market operations. We know about the Vrex's plans to expand into protected space. We know about every species' military capabilities, trade secrets, and political vulnerabilities. That's impossible. The Federation has been around for hundreds of years. Humans have only been members for 5. We've been studying galactic politics for much longer than that," Jake said calmly. "We spent 50 years learning about all of you before we even applied for membership." Kelthera felt a chill. "You were spying on us." "We were protecting ourselves," Jake corrected. "When you're a new species entering a galaxy full of aliens with advanced weapons, you need to understand what you're getting into." "But how? How could you learn so much without us knowing?" Jake stood up and walked to his plants again. He picked a ripe tomato and examined it carefully. "Kelthera, what do you think is the most powerful weapon in the galaxy? Plasma cannons? Antimatter bombs? The Corthany battle cruisers? Information?" Jake said simply. "Information is the most powerful weapon ever created. Everything else is just tools for using information." He sat back down and cut the tomato into slices. "Would you like to try this? It's from Earth." Kelthera took a piece and tasted it. It was sweet and tangy, unlike anything from her home world. "It's good. My grandmother grew tomatoes like this. She taught me that the best things in life are simple but take time to grow properly." "You're avoiding my question." Jake laughed. "You're right. I am." He became more serious. "Kelthera, humans learned something during our violent history that no other species seems to understand. We learned that real power isn't about who has the biggest weapon or the strongest military. Then what is it about? It's about understanding systems, political systems, economic systems, social systems. When you understand how these systems work, you know exactly where to apply pressure to get what you want. You said that before, but I still don't understand how that makes you more powerful than species with better weapons." Jake pulled out his tablet and showed her a complex diagram. "Look at this. It's a map of galactic trade routes. Every line represents money flowing between star systems. Every dot represents a world that depends on that trade." Kelthera studied the diagram. It looked like a vast spider web connecting thousands of worlds. "Now," Jake said, touching the screen, "red dots appeared at key intersection points. These 17 locations control 80% of all galactic trade. If something happened to these places, the entire galactic economy would collapse within weeks. But those locations are heavily defended. Some of them are in Corthany space. You don't need to attack them," Jake explained. "You just need to make them unreliable. A few computer viruses here, some accounting errors there, maybe some labor disputes at exactly the wrong time." Kelthera was beginning to understand, and it frightened her. "You could crash the entire galactic economy. We could crash it, rebuild it, and crash it again. Jake said matter-of-factly. But we don't want to do that. Economic chaos hurts everyone, including us. Then why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand something important. We're not your enemies. We don't want to conquer anyone or destroy anything. We just want to make sure that strong people can't hurt weak people. Jake showed her another display. This one showed military supply chains, communication networks, and command structures for every major species in the Federation. The Korthini. Think they're powerful because they have big guns. But their guns are useless if they can't communicate with their ships. Their ships are useless if they can't get fuel. They can't get fuel if their supply companies go out of business. And you control all of that? We understand all of that, Jake corrected. There's a difference. Control means forcing people to do what you want. Understanding means knowing how to make people want to do what you want. Kelthera was quiet for a long moment. This is why you're forbidden to carry weapons in the council chamber. We're not forbidden weapons because we're dangerous, Jake said. We're forbidden weapons because we don't need them. Every other species carries weapons to show their power. We show our power by not needing weapons. The empty hands are more frightening than any sword. Exactly. When someone carries a weapon, you know what they're capable of. When someone doesn't need a weapon, you have no idea what they might do. Jake began cleaning up his gardening tools. Kelthera, let me ask you something. Why do you think we joined the Federation? To gain access to galactic trade and technology? We already had access to those things. We were trading with dozens of species before we joined. Our technology was already advanced enough to compete with anyone. Then why? Jake looked up at the artificial sky above the diplomatic compound. Because we got tired of watching stronger species hurt weaker ones. We got tired of seeing wars that could be prevented. We got tired of knowing that we could fix problems, but having no legal authority to do it. So you joined the Federation to become galactic police? We joined the Federation to become galactic teachers, Jake said. We want to teach other species what we learned during our bloody history. That cooperation is more profitable than conquest. That peace is more powerful than war. That the strongest person in the room is usually the one who doesn't need to prove it. Kelthera thought about the Mallory, still safe on their home world. The Korthini military, mysteriously restored to full power after abandoning their invasion plans. The Zephyrian-Vrex conflict, resolved without a single shot fired. You're already teaching those lessons. Some species learn faster than others. Jake said diplomatically. And if they don't learn? Jake's expression became serious. Then they discover that humans can be very patient teachers. We can create the same lesson over and over until they understand it. Like what you did to my people? Your people made a mistake. They tried to manipulate others into fighting so they could profit from the chaos. We showed them that chaos has a price, and we control who pays it. Kelthera realized something that made her stomach drop. You've been planning this conversation, haven't you? You wanted me to ask these questions. I wanted someone to understand, Jake admitted. The other species need to know why humans are different. Why we're allowed in their most sacred spaces without weapons. Why they should listen to us when we suggest solutions to their problems. Because you could destroy us all if we don't. Because we could save you all if you let us, Jake corrected gently. Destruction is easy. Any species can blow things up. But building something better, something that works for everyone, that takes real skill. Jake packed up his tools and prepared to go inside. Kelthera, I want you to remember something. Every species in the Federation has the capacity for violence. Humans just have the capacity for violence at every level. Physical, economic, social, political. But we also have something else. What? We have the experience of nearly destroying ourselves and the wisdom to choose not to do it again. That combination makes us the perfect peacekeepers. We know how to fight any kind of war, but we also know why every war should be avoided. As Jake walked toward his building, Kalthara called after him. What happens now? To my people, I mean. Your people will honor their agreements. They'll return the stolen technology and pay compensation for the damage they caused. And they'll think very carefully before trying to manipulate other species again. And if we don't? Jake paused at his door. Then you'll discover that the galaxy is much smaller than you thought. And humans have very long memories. That night, Kalthara sent a long message to her home world. She told her government everything Jake had revealed. She explained why the Drakmari should honor their agreements and avoid any future deception operations. She ended her message with a simple warning. The humans are not what they appear to be. They are far more dangerous than any of us imagined. But they are also far more valuable as allies than as enemies. We must choose cooperation. 3 months later, the Drakmari Collective formally apologized to both the Zephyrians and the Vrex. They returned all stolen technology and paid generous compensation. They also proposed a new 3-way trade alliance that benefited all 3 species.